Welcome back, YouTube. We are recording live here from Brian's Underground Lair. This is my new board game table setup here, and excited to be able to shoot another video after so long. Believe me, I've missed it as much as anyone else, but tomorrow we're going to get a chance to do something new. I'm going to be not battling with Chris, but I'm going to be teaching 2 or 3 of my gaming buddies here locally to come over and test out Axis for the first time. They've not played Axis and Allies at all, and let alone the Global 1940. But that's why I recorded the how-to video a few days ago, and I am really looking forward to teaching some new players. So that I'll have a fun, new, interesting playing experience, but more importantly, be training up new players who can then begin to enjoy the game as well. So starting off the video, as always, with the initial shot of the board, initial setup here. Also want to take just a few moments before the game begins, before my friends arrive, to talk about strategy. It's always fun to kind of take a little aside and talk about what I'm going to do ahead of time so we can see then how it works out. So I'll be playing the Axis as usual. My 2 or 3 friends will be dividing up the Allies. And given that this is a teaching game, I've decided that what I think I'm going to do is a J1 attack with Japan. That's probably going to include the Pearl Harbor option. Just strike out as much as possible. Hey, I'm not going to go too easy on them here. But normally, at least, especially under the house rules that Chris and I have been tweaking over these past several years, which we are going to play with, by the way, the Omega 3.2 is the most recent version. And they tend to try and balance out the Axis advantage and discourage early aggression like that. But I'm going to do it anyway. And the reason being, not because it, I think, is the most effective strategy overall in all situations, but frankly, just to get the other players in the game. You know, it's more fun when everybody is involved in the game right away. And so attacking with Japan on the first turn brings in the U.S., brings in UK, Pacific, and Anzac. So it'll be fun for them. They'll actually get to do something. Really my only motivation with that. So since I'm doing a J1, and they'll be activating the U.S. early in the game, that really kind of rules out, in my mind, an effective sea lion strategy, because right about the time that you're getting your German Navy up and running is when the U.S. really ought to be in a position to start doing something about it. There are counter arguments, right? You've got a big Navy. It'll take them a few turns to build up, be able to do anything meaningful with the U.S., but they'll be flying planes, they'll be flying bombers. If they're paying attention, they'll be able to supplement, and then you're just getting pooched by Russia on the backside. So that's not the strategy I'm going to pursue anyway, put it that way. What I am going to do is some sort of Russian-oriented strategy. I mean, honestly, I got to see how it's going to play out. I haven't committed to anything on Germany yet in my mind, but I'm going to start off turn 1, G1, unless you're doing something out of the box, out of ordinary, is pretty rote, no matter what your ultimate strategy is. I think I'm leaning towards, honestly, pursuing more of a dark skies strategy. One, because I don't think I've ever really committed to that strategy before. I've implemented portions of it. I bought some bombers for Germany in the past, but I've never really gone whole hog and dedicated to that strategy before. So I think that might be fun to try, and a learning opportunity for me as well as my friends. And I also think that it's suited for a J1 environment, because that puts you in a position where you can start to deter some of these early naval excursions from the U.S. and kind of slow them down a little bit while giving yourself a lot of offensive power to launch against Russia. So that's what I'm leaning towards. We'll see if I stick with that commitment or not. But yeah, soon we shall see. So halfway through turn 1, as promised, we have a Japanese declaration attack on turn 1. Successful rolls there in the Hawaiian Sea Zone, not on the Hawaiian territory, but we did occupy the Philippines. Kind of a standard push into China, with everybody piling up down here in Kwang Sea. One move I'm already slipping here is I neglected to take Vietnam. I missed the fact that I had an extra artillery that could have gone in there and when I was choosing my combat movements, so stuck with that. I have to deal with that later, but free French guy down there. Russians are pulling back here in northern Russia to Bryansk while positioning themselves over here. Interestingly, aggressive purchase by Russia with a Strat bomber. That'll come in handy for them, but they are definitely setting up the offense for the German side for sure. Germany themselves, fairly standard opening naval maneuver up here, wiping out the UK Navy, buying a bomber and a destroyer and a, what else did I buy? Cruiser? No, what else? Yeah. Plane, that's what it was. Plane, destroyer, and a bomber. So this is how we've expanded out here for Germany's first turn. And about to go into U.S. with the U.S. in the war. At the beginning of turn 2, we see how turn 1 went. The Americans actually did a fine job of reinforcing Hawaii with a number of air units and land units as well, bring everything they could from the western U.S. So I'm going to have to think long and hard before attempting to occupy Hawaii there. The Anzacians built up a fleet, built a destroyer, that's about it. Down in the south, the Indians have landed some troops here in Shan State, moving its front up, building some troops in Calcutta, otherwise holding fast. While on the European map, the British didn't do a lot other than attacking out, taking this navy out of the Malta Sea Zone. That allowed the Italians to kind of lash out with the British fleet split up as it was, and with the only British transport being in this Egyptian sea zone. Italians grabbed the opportunity to send all of their navy, all their remaining navy, down there, take that out, occupying Syria in the meantime and advancing on Alexandria. So took advantage of some of the split forces there from the British and caused some disruption there. Speaking of disruption, we've got the French ships causing a convoy disruption to the newly occupied southern France. And up here in the UK Isles, British Isles, we've bought a couple planes here, I think it was, as well as a submarine for the British. So not a lot of infantry, but a whole heck of a lot of air force in the British Isles. Americans, as you saw, bought some ships and some planes in the Pacific Zone, doing a KJF kind of orientation, not building anything in the Atlantic, but occupying Brazil as we prepare for turn 2. Halfway through turn 2, Japan's just finished its turn. The fleet here in Wake decided to engage with the Hawaiian fleet, but not try to invade the land territory since there were so many planes there. Those planes did choose to scramble into the naval combat, and this is what's left. I sent one carrier in to absorb hits, didn't end up needing to absorb them, so now I've got to split fleet there. Took Midway in the meantime, but not taking Hawaii because I couldn't have landed that one. On the rest of the map, this Philippine fleet all went this way, westward into both Siam or Shan State rather, and Malaya, where the UK troops were located. Were able to take them, although not without some losses to the aircraft in order to take Shan State, and that aircraft fleet back here in Guangxi. Some more advancement into China. So on the Russian end of things, the Germans took the opportunity to advance on the Russian front, turn 2, while they were still beefing up rather than wait, and let them build up enough to make it problematic here on the front. And Russia learned a little bit the hard way about the importance of infantry and absorbing hits. Came back really aggressively with the aircraft that had built first turn into Baltic states to try and retake that. That did not go in its favor. Did whittle down some of eastern Poland, but Germans were able to hang on to both of those territories. Germany also taking Greece and the rest of France. So it's now the Allies' turn to retaliate. We've reached the beginning of turn 3 here in the Pacific. The Americans wiped out what was left of the Japanese in Sea Zone 26 and have a bit of Navy left to show for it, as well as Air Force. Of course, the Japanese, having split their forces, still have some here in Wake Island and land unit in Midway as well. But instead of focusing on Japan as it appeared U.S. is going to do, they've now split their bills and built everything last turn in the Atlantic, which we'll see in a second. On southern front, Anzac, recognizing the open gap here in naval forces for Japan, is focusing all on naval units, having just built a battleship last time with all of its enormous bonuses that it gets having been in the war. The Indians are appropriately turtling in Calcutta here, seeing the rather sizable Navy and Air Force on their back door, resisting the temptation to be aggressive. Chinese just building up and kind of hoping not to die anytime soon. Whereas on the European board here, so again, UK wanting to be aggressive, understandably, but not having any great options after Italy was able to encircle Egypt on turn 2. So really nothing that could be done to prevent that attack, but they did put up as big of a defense as possible, flying the plane in from Malta and forcing the Italians to lose some units. But they were able to take Egypt and do that pretty handily, with enough of a Navy and land units left to make a difference. They're pouring now into Iraq, having again been able to get around the British defenses there on turn 1. Still some forces left to be reckoned with. The French and all the Allies really piling up here in Morocco, starting to build a Navy in Sea Zone 91, as well as some transports up here in the UK, taking advantage of the fact that there's really not much of a Japanese or German Navy rather, and what is there is over here committed to the Russian invasion. So with the exception of that sub and the planes that are building up here, we see a stack of 5 bombers, for example, and a fair amount of planes in Germany as well, but not really in position to do a lot of damage to the British without completely reversing their momentum there. So UK taking advantage of that, doing what they can to build up a threat of an invasion force, supported here, as I said, by the Americans building up a fleet of naval units with a bomber and plane down here as well. So doing what they can to start making a presence in the Atlantic. We'll see what it does to slow down Germany on turn 3. Now halfway through turn 3, and Japan has come out of the box. So in response to the U.S. going all Atlantic last turn, Japan reminded them they were still there by shooting some transports up to Alaska. Honestly, not something I planned to do until the U.S. kind of left that open. Now they've got something to deal with on the Pacific side. Attacked this Hawaiian fleet, was hoping to wipe that out. Didn't do that. In fact, got my butt kicked a little bit, but was able to damage the carrier and thus get rid of the plane that was on it while retreating the carrier of mine back this way. Also shot a transport down to take Guam, thus completing this trifecta and getting an additional bonus for that. And down south, contemplated going straight into Calcutta. That would have been a little tough, so what we did was just burst out all the transports in every direction, take every one of the money islands all at once for a big, huge economic boost. The other thing that went really well on Japan's turn was China was able to spread out everything that was there, use the Air Force support that I had in order to take out all the remaining Chinese troops. Some unfortunate rolls on China's part didn't hurt, but and so that went better than it could have, but nevertheless a great result there. Just got some empty Chinese territories to take, hopefully taking that bonus by next turn. On the European side, Germany wasn't originally intending to go into Leningrad up here, but after the devastating Russian counteroffensive on turn 2, it just made sense to take that factory and get that occupied, since there's probably not going to be a lot of counterattack ability here. There are some stacks of infantry here and there, but with their Air Force depleted, Russia has gone all infantry. That's a stack of 12 or more, 14 maybe in Moscow, 11 or more in Ukraine. So starting to build up some large stacks on that side. So now it's we're reaching that peak pain point for the Allies. Can they absorb it and start turning the tide on the rest of turn 3? By the beginning of turn 4, we have the American Navy kind of limping back to San Francisco and building up a little bit of support, mostly on the ground side, to blunt the Alaskan invaders. On the Anzac front, they are quietly building out their bonuses. They're getting 16 every turn as they position themselves to launch out into the South Pacific. The Calcuttans, again, turtling and whittled down to, I think, 6 IPCs on the board, plus a few bonuses under the house rules. Italy, just a monster. Once Italy breaks out past the British in Africa, there's really no stopping them. So they've continued to plow into Persia and solidifying their position in the Mediterranean by eliminating all the surface warships, getting that bonus now as well, and building an aircraft carrier. While the Allies had begun building a multinational fleet in Sea Zone 91 to keep me occupied, Italy was able to plug the gap there by taking Gibraltar. Not necessarily for good, because, it's pretty evenly matched force right there, but that'll at least slow the advance. UK on its turn was able to assemble the Navy it's been building up to drop a significant number of guys here in Normandy, which honestly is going to slow down Germany's momentum. Germany already got its momentum a little bit sidetracked by going up here, taking Leningrad instead of plowing straight through to Belarus and onto Moscow. Now that's going to get slowed down even further because they have to double back and take care of Holland. You'll notice last turn I built 5 mechs in Germany, 5 in West, instead of all of them in Germany pushing towards to Moscow, because I saw that I was really kind of under-defended on the land side, and noted that she really could have dropped troops into Western Germany, which I'm informed she was going to almost do anyway, and that would have, been hurtful to me. It would have been a lot more hurtful if I didn't put anybody there. Either way, this was the right move for UK to pull back my momentum as far back west as they could get. But still, it's going to take me some effort, and that's effort that's not going towards Moscow, and so slowing my advance that way. See what more Germany can advance here on turn 4. Well, we've gotten as far as Russia's turn in turn 4 until my Axis students have called it a day. We're 9 hours into the game. Right at the beginning of turn 4, just took Germany's turn. Germany was able to clean up the leftover Russian infantries in Vyborg and Karelia, pile on as much as it could into Belarus. Certainly enough units there and enough distance between them and Moscow and between them and Ukraine that the Russians can't do anything to repel them. Fortunately, Belarus was in the territory we already owned, so we were able to land planes there. Russia, did what it could in terms of buying a bunch of guys, but really the momentum here is such that, Russia's going to have a hard time. It did a lot of things right. The Allies did a lot of things right to try and slow down Germany's momentum. Certainly this invasion here in Normandy was part of that solution. Now, of course, Germany is able to come back and take it, but only did so by pulling a lot of mobile units away from Western Germany, from France, from Germany itself, that could have otherwise, gone into the Russian side of things. The bombers did what they were supposed to do, which was cover a lot of ground and help take back that land without too many loss of land units. But ultimately, the overall momentum for the Axis is enough that I think they've overcome the curve, and they're going to be almost near impossible to stop. Right? Italy got out of containment real early and has become a monster economically. And with the bonuses it's getting, it's going to get, it's already bigger than the UK's economy at this point, which is, always a bad sign for the Allies. It's unopposed in the Middle East. It's got a strong foothold on Egypt. It's just closed off Gibraltar. U.S. has had, it hasn't been able to get momentum on either side. It's had to be reactive. So it has, in fact, started to build up, add to the Seazone 91 fleet down here, which is good, and had to respond in the Pacific to this kind of silly Axis invasion of the Alaskan territory here. So it's had to build up a lot of ground units and come fix its broken ships. So whenever U.S. gets in that position, it's not gaining any ground. It's not helping reduce the Axis momentum. Really, the shining star here for turn 4 was going to be Anzac, which is just growing quietly and unopposed because Japan's busy doing other things. So it's got this nice little fleet. It's getting its bonuses by getting Dutch New Guinea. It built a battleship of all things last turn. It's getting 16 IPCs. Could be getting more if it takes some of the money islands. And just churning out a fleet that, as we know from prior games, if you let Anzac go long enough, they really become a naval power and becomes a real thorn in Japan's side. This game, I don't think that's going to happen. The momentum is too much in the Axis's favor. We're able to get down into Calcutta real quick and able to get through China. And with these forces, for example, this is something that Russia would have done differently in retrospect, is pull these guys into either theater, either putting pressure on Manchuria and shutting off Mongolia, or just pulling these guys consistently back every turn so that they're here to oppose the Japanese expansion into Russia by the time they got there. This time around, obviously, that's not going to happen. So Japan is going to contribute to gobbling up the backside of Russia while Germany eats the front side, and Moscow becomes a little island that just gets pulverized with bombers and unable to build anything until it slowly just fades into dust. So, as we said from the beginning, this was a learning game. Each of my three opponents here on the Allied team. This is their first game, not only of Global 1940, but of Axis and Allies at all. So the fact that they were able to pull any kind of strategy together is a win for them. So this is intended to be an educational experience, intended to be a fun way to learn, because, you know, as we've been sitting here around the board discussing, you can only learn so much about the game by watching strategy videos. And trust me, watch, they did. They've sacrificed quite a bit of their weekend reading not only the house rules, but all sorts of strategy videos, from General Hand Grenade to Young Grasshopper and all the online commentary. So bravo to the community for educating a few new players, all of whom are super excited to continue learning the game. Any commentary from the Allies before we wrap up the video?
We'll get you next time.
Okay. Well, that's the win from this game, is that we have three new players and an ability to churn out new games of Axis and Allies here in the brand new Underground Lair introductory game from the basement. So that also is a big win and another video for the channel. Peace out.